Today on Deep Thoughts, we're going to talk about something very specific. Satan. The belief in Satan, the theories behind him, whether or not you're religious or secular, how it actually could be a threat to your existence. Satan. I feel a little strange doing an episode on Satan before doing an episode on God, but I think that most of us don't sit around worrying about people who worship God as much as we worry about people who worship Satan. But let's talk about the fundamentals of the mind real quick before we dive into specifics. For a religious person, Satan is the one who plays opposite God's role. He doesn't mess up your life in gigantic ways. He messes up your life in little tiny ways. He whispers in your ear little tiny decisions. I always tell my friends, I say, it's not the big decisions in your life that really change your life. It's all the little tiny ones that convince you that the big ones are the ones that you should take. So every single tiny minuscule thought you have is actually paramount to your existence and your future and your path in life. So if there were a Satan, something that is diametrically opposed to good, something that is anti-life, kind of like a Cthulhu type character, one could argue that that needs to exist in the universe. If you're religious, then it has a spot. It has a face. I got to make sure not to do the wrong gestures here. One of my friends and listeners, he said, "You're doing Masonic Satan hand gestures when you do the show." I'm like, "Holy shit, am I? I only know like 3, and it would be the horns. It would be double handshaking like this when you meet somebody." And what was the other one? Oh yeah, if you had a cut in your shirt, you could stick your hand in the cut like Napoleon. It's the only ones I really know. Maybe the prince holding, his hand in front of his eye. Everyone does the hand in front of the eye thing to signify the one eye that's watching you. I guess. Jesus, I don't know. That whole conversation kind of inspired me to say, let's do the show on Satan. Let's bring this whole fucking thing out. Because I'm going to lay down my opinion on this shit. We'll fold in secret societies as well. But if you're a secular person, you might just simply say, oh, those are religious people thumbing everything into one drive, right? That is the shit they don't like or the shit they're afraid of, right? And that's what I've been lamenting on this show, is that everything that you're convinced to be afraid of ends up being your devil. Most people in the world don't speak Arabic and from Western countries, but they certainly know a shit ton about them, enough to kill them. Yeah. I know just the basics of Arabic, and I wouldn't say I have any right to judge them on any level, right? Satan. Okay. So you might say, again, a religious person will say, definitely Satan exists, and a secular person says, bullshit. That's just where you put all the things you don't like. Fair enough. Fair enough. There are Satanistic churches, all right? So it doesn't matter what fucking camp you fall in. We allow Satan churches to exist. And it's not just this thing of freedom of religion. When Satanistic churches move into your neighborhood, people disappear. It's just as simple. Whether or not they have the balls to actually do the ritual at their homes, or their churches, or whether or not they divert it to their houses or some other fucking weird place that they own. People who worship Satan, okay? Death is not a bad thing. Death is a good thing, and they're here to administer it to you and your kind, but never to themselves, right? If death was so fucking good in their religion, why don't they all commit suicide and go join the asshole wherever he might be, right? If they really believe that. But it's about inflicting pain and suffering on other people. And what's interesting about it is it seems to be raceless. Satan churches, they don't care what race you are. Are you willing to drink the squirrel's blood, the little kid's blood? Are you willing to rape that woman that we've got hidden in the basement? Well, shit, you're one of us. We got to stick together. Satanism is on the absolute rise in this planet. And it's measured by two different things coming right at each other. Number of Satanistic churches setting up shop in major cities and then getting in the news for a couple days and then fading out of the news. To Satan worshipping sculptures being deployed all over the world by these these artists that are claiming some bullshit line of crap, right? So what's the inverse religion then? If you're a Christian, you'll just immediately fall back into Christianity. Look up your Bible, and then that's where you're going to actually find the guidance away from darkness, where you give more than you take. You're empathetic, you're sympathetic, everything's good. But what if you're secular? What if you're secular? What do you do? I think it's safe to say the world's headed towards a majority of people who don't have any religion of any kind. What do you do about these Satanistic people forming their little clubs in your backyard? Again, only major cities actually report that there's a Satan church down the street. A lot of them are just hidden. A lot of them are just individuals in your towns practicing. And because it's such a small, hideous clique, they click together hard and they watch each other's backs, because what they need to do to satisfy themselves is break the law to the absolute extent of its existence. Their crimes are so horrific that you might take any massacre of adults that you could imagine. 100 adults die in some location due to some nutbag running around with something. And you take a couple of their crimes with children, and if I said, okay, you get to pick which group dies, this nutbag at the mall shooting people, or what these Satanistic people did to this child, or a few children, I bet it'd be a fucking hard decision to make, man. And you would be almost 80% sure you would kill all the adults after seeing what they do to these kids. But you'd think about it, your brain would come in and you'd think about it. But these people are allowed to proliferate and exist on planet Earth under the protection of freedom of religion, when the freedoms given to most religions are pretty benign, right? There's Christians I meet every single day and I don't know it. There's Jews, I don't know they're Jews. There's Arabs, maybe I look at their skin and wonder. But they don't walk around pushing their crap on you. And especially after I go home, I don't worry about them doing anything to my world nefarious. Except, maybe getting indoctrinated for war. That's probably the worst one, right? But even that has a set of requirements. It takes a long time to rationalize. It takes a long time to fight. It's all on the news. When a soldier goes over there for Jesus to kill an Arab, I can see it. It's in my face. I know how fucked up the world is in that realm, and it just happens. But a Satan worshiper hides in the fucking shadows. And they hide at the top of police. Sometimes, top of government for sure. They turn into monarchs, or they are monarchs. And that's why we have to be concerned. So, secret societies. The Church of Satan is totally in the open, and it's becoming more and more in the open every single day. I mean, it's probably once a month I see an article about a new Church of Satan forming itself in some city or town in the United States of America, and everyone's in an uproar for a very short period of time, then it all goes away. Now, if any of you have seen True Detective on HBO, you'll know why that's not a good idea. There have been, I believe I think I got this right, Staten Island, New York in the 70s had a big Church of Satan with a bunch of little factions, and kids started disappearing like crazy. And I've covered some of this in my Good and Evil episode. So if you've seen that episode and you remember it well, some of this will be a repeat, but most of this we're going to go way deeper than we ever went on that episode. Now, I will say this, and being a raised religious, popping out around 8 years old, getting back into Christianity probably around 18, popping back out at 21, and just kind of living a normal life. This notion of Satan has a couple different effects on someone like myself. On one level, I obviously don't believe in a guy who's red with horns and that kind of shit. I don't believe in a fiery pit anywhere in the universe where my soul will go if I act badly. I happen to believe that we create our own hell. If you know right from wrong, and most of us do, you know what you've done to other people that's good and what you've done to other people that's bad. And you will carry it every single day of your life. And if there's any truth after this life, then it'll all come slamming down. So time's a single plaque on the wall, and everything you've done that's good in battle be on that plaque. And that's why I think you need to be good to people. That's why you need to give more than you take, right? But on the flip side of that symbolism of Satan, we do know there's opposition at all levels of everything in this universe. It's almost as if the world's been built beautifully to have choice. At every subatomic and macro level, there's choice. And some people don't believe in God because they're like, hey man, if God existed, he'd come down and say hello. It's like, I don't think so. I don't care what you think God is. If God were to come down in front of you and say, hey dude, what's up? Hey chick, you would have no more choice. Really. It'd be a hell of a lot tougher to have a bad choice. It'd be a hell of a lot tougher to pick that thing you're not supposed to do, quote unquote. Of course, God would have to clarify a bunch of the inventions since the Bible, right? But as I experience the world, I definitely see evil all over the place, and I simply just say, when you take time out of your day to hurt somebody else, to get ahead, that's evil. That's pure evil, And there might be a little bit of the gray area down at the seam where it turns back into good, but most of it's the stuff I'm thinking of are the bankers of the world that basically destroy everything. The doctor that overprescribes fucking medicine just so they can get the kickback to keep their doors open. I have no sympathy for that. A guy who's selling a car who screws the person 9 ways to Sunday through financing and a bunch of other bullshit they put on the car. No one's good. Like, we're bred to be bad. We watch television and we end up rooting for these bad heroes, right? Like I said before. That's evil for me. And so this idea of saying, I have 2 ways to live my life. I can live life and say, well, evil's everywhere and everything, which is a little, it's a little bit of a pessimistic view on the universe, and I tend not to go those directions. We use the word evil on this show, and we use it on our Facebook page, and it's because we want to label people that live in that category where they constantly choose someone else's pain to get ahead, constantly. You have several of them running for president right now. Hillary Clinton being a number 1 candidate who has got blood on her hands. She doesn't give a fuck about anybody. If you were against her and she was aware of your existence and you could actually move opinion, she will have you fucking killed, rolled up in a carpet, and stuck at your nearest theme park. She doesn't give a fuck, okay? She's the evilest fucking broad I think I've ever had documented in front of my eyes. And these are, my opinion about her is based on the above ground bullshit that she pulls and all of the admissions of Secret Service people who've seen her do crazy shit and get people fucking killed. Alex Jones has done a great job documenting her evil deeds, right? So there's people who worship the other side, maybe they don't go to a church, and then there's people who worship the other side, maybe they belong to a secret society. Where it's sort of like us versus them. One of our listeners who mentioned me doing Satan handshakes or whatever, hand gestures. If you knew me, one, you'd never fucking say that to my face if you knew me, because you would know for a fact I lived my entire fucking life taking time out of my life to bring these shows to you. And in terms of studying this information and following it year to year to year, the amount of sacrifices I've made through social interactions with people, chicks I've tried to date that can't fucking handle the truth, you kind of estrange your kid a little bit at times because you're totally head down on this stuff. The amount of sacrificing I've done to push good into this world and fight these cocksuckers is at a maximum, right? So to say I'm sitting here throwing out fucking signs for these people, I take it as a joke. But if there's a God, I'm his fucking paladin mowing through these fuckers. And there's 2 ways to do it, You can somehow go off and try to hurt these people physically, which would get your ass killed in a second. Or you can do the number 1 thing that hurts them, and that's reveal the patterns of deception that they use on us. Learning the rules that rule you. It's the fucking best way to hurt them. is to take all these concepts of how they fuck with us and get them revealed, right? And on that subject, the problem with the subject of Satan and the problem with the subject of what they do to human beings as a result of belonging to these organizations, secret or otherwise, and I'm going to loop back to the Masons and that kind of stuff here in a second. Honestly, I don't give a shit what they call their secret societies, right? But the problem is if I sit down any human being who isn't a truther, who hasn't gone down that fucking rabbit hole and hit the dead end and come back up, if they still have one chamber down there that they need to fucking research, they're not ready for what I need to discuss with them. They're not ready to hear about child sacrifices, about drinking the blood of children. I was even really careful on the show I put out, like Good and Evil. I was very, very careful not to say too much, but we're on the subject of fucking Satan, so I'm going to start using some F-bombs to just, Satan wants me to do it. That's part of it. Here's the thing. I'm sure you got a bunch of fucking goofball nerds who don't like themselves, who are having huge identity crises in life, and they're afraid of the world. And so they put a bunch of tattoos on their bodies of mean things, right? The artist can put a mean-looking skull on my fat, bloated arm with my goofy fucking face and my skippity-dop weird fucking walk down the street. And they want that tattoo to do their fucking job, right? This is my manhood in ink right here, right? I love fucking tattoos, trust me. I'm just saying these guys that try to get tattoos to freak you out are marshmallows, like Ice-T said. They're marshmallows inside, right? It's the guy in the fucking khaki shorts walking aimlessly is the guy who'll kill you, So I'm sure that there's a bunch of those guys inside of these Satanistic churches, right? If you look at the phenomenon in America that's now gone, thank fucking God, but there was goth and emo. If you guys aren't familiar, goth was dress in black, white out your face a lot, and put a bunch of crazy cranial accessories on, right? And then you had emo, where they actually added that, they simplified the look quite a bit, and you had to be depressed constantly, right? Goth people were pretty depressed too, but who made up the demographic of these fucking kids? 99.9% were white, privileged, fucking spoon-fed kids that had every goddamn toy at home, never went without any amenity. Mommy and daddy already had their college fucking paid for by the time they were 2. Those are the kids that made up this feel sorry for me fucking populace, right? They're typically the assholes that go off and join these churches and form them and do horrible things because they have no identity. And once you have no identity, you don't have a value of life. You don't. And you live in almost a chaotic, second-to-second, sitcom of crazy. It's called situational comedy, right? Just one situation to another situation, another situation. But for them, it doesn't make any sense. And a lot of them get to the point where they hate the mirror so bad they hate God. They hate God because God made them that way. They're the one eating the fucking pie with, thighs that are one leg, and it's God's fault. Their parents, maybe they're so rich they don't pay attention to them or whatever the deal is. But I've seen these kids. I've met these people. I've met them as adults who happen to have sort of weird backgrounds, and I have never heard anybody tell me to my face I've gone to a Church of Satan. I don't know anybody who's ever said that. In terms of Masonic lodges, I know of 2 in the whole world, one in my hometown and one in Hermosa Beach that I used to have to pass every time I drove to my girlfriend back in the day. Those are the only 2. My grandfather joined the one in my hometown so he could drive the little car during the parade with the fez on his head. I never met the dude, but his tombstone has the little, the little G and the little doodad. I forgot what the fuck you call it because I'm so into fucking Satan. And my grandmother has a pentagram, an upside-down star without the goat head, thank God, on her side of the little joined-up tombstone head, right? And that pisses me off, quite frankly. But again, at the bottom level of Mason people in normal towns, it's nothing, right? But we can't have the conversation about what actually takes place with these people. And that's a big fucking problem. The most evil shit on planet Earth, it's almost as if aliens bred us, right? And when that thought approaches consciousness, the brain shuts down. You know, it's like those goats that are paralyzed if there's a loud noise, right? That's like the human mind when you talk about Satanism and what they fucking do. And the more hideous they do shit, the more the mind shuts down and no one wants to listen. And what's really weird is you'll find a parent with a child, a young child who should probably hear about it, especially if they got a church down the street, right? But they'll be out there looking for child predators. You know, the guy lives next door, which is not a bad idea as well. They'll talk to you all about, you know, bad things in the world. They won't let their kid walk down the street by themselves. But they don't want to know why kids disappear, you know? Now, True Detective was a very interesting story because it dealt with the occult. And I won't ruin the show for you, but it took the tact of Da Vinci Code. Da Vinci Code was allowed to be made. If you watch the movie at the very beginning, your jaw's on the fucking ground. The more you're awake and you watch the Da Vinci Code, and you see the very beginning where they have this sort of cabal of weird people working together to create these secret societies, these Illuminati societies with all their symbolism on the wall and stuff. Which is probably a little bit much, but you know, they're meeting, and it looks like a group of people conspiring together, just like they do in real life. But what happened at the end of Da Vinci Code? I will ruin this one for you. It's one albino guy that lives in the attic of a fucking church or some bullshit, right? They took it as the accusation that many people work together, and they said, no, but of course it's one guy that runs the whole show. Really, right? Couldn't be multiple people working together with agendas that seem to pop globally at the same exact time, where London, Europe, America, and Australia do the same fucking thing in the news constantly, right? Couldn't be that. It's one guy. It's one mastermind sitting in his apartment in Santa Monica typing on his fucking iBook, you know. No. It's a cabal of people that do stuff. True Detective, Season 1, which so far is the only one I can stomach. It deals with that exact thing, makes it look huge. There's definitely other people related and involved with the situation, but in the end, it's one guy. One nutbag at the end. And so your brain goes from giant international cabal of Satanistic worshipers and all their churches that you know exist, you can look them up online, over to one guy. And that theme is going to be repeated in Hollywood by them for as long as they exist and they control what you see on television. It's to program us to not fear the many, but to fear the one. And we think in our back of our brain, well, that one guy doesn't live next to us, right? You know, if there's not a serial killer running around my neighborhood, then I'm totally safe. But people disappear all the time. I thought it was interesting, Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, which again, he said was his best work, which I didn't understand for a while until after I woke up a little bit and I was like, oh, I see what you were doing. You know, they had a girl who dies in the movie, and our main character, Tom Cruise, is trying to find out who killed her. And the way that they condition the whole thing at the end is to say that she died of, you know, being stupid. It was of her own fault. And, of course, they don't want the death to come back to them and their crazy parties, so they actually ended up disposing of her body in sort of a criminal-looking way. It's obviously illegal to dispose of a body without, you know, telling the cops how she died. But they said, okay, it's kind of the best of, you know, of a bad situation. You know, she ends up getting herself hurt at the party because if she overdrinks or what. I can't remember how they said she died. Just happened to be the chick that he runs into, right? But I think the reason why it was a big deal for him is because he exposed to the world that these people exist, that they have these crazy parties. And, of course, the only thing he can put on camera is the sex. And everybody blows sex off, right? Whatever, do what you want to do with your body. And I'm pretty much the same way, you know. If STDs are no big deal for you, then sleep all around all the fuck you want. Do what you want to do with yourself. I don't personally care, right? Just don't fuck with me. And don't snatch somebody who doesn't want to have sex with you. But what he probably wanted to put in there was all the stuff that we're about to talk about. Now, the subject of Satanistic churches because I need to validate this a little bit with you guys. Obviously, like I said, if I've ever passed a Church of Satan, I have no idea that it happened. I've seen them on the internet a million times. I've seen these sculptures come out. I've seen Lucifer by the Colorado airport. Very, very evident Satan worshiping, right? And the guy who made it died on it, like he was working on it and he dies. I mean, how the fuck do you do that? I know it's a tall horse, but Jesus. Just seems like he was hired to do it, probably didn't like making it, and he was sacrificed into it. Who knows, right? Something fucking weird always happens to these people that help out these guys. They think they're in the private club and they end up dead. So the confirmation, or I should say the claims that I'm about to mention, are claims that come from people in the FBI, people who have been reporters and embed themselves in these groups, individuals that joined the groups for one reason, ascended through the levels, and popped out and said, whoa, the shit at the top is insane. And people who've been next to royalty. And then the things that they did in public that everybody has seen, but because you're not allowed to look in the direction of evil when it gets to this level, you never hear about it again. I think that everything I'm about to say we mentioned on the show, either through the talk show or on my Good and Evil episode, but we're just going to go right down the line, right? There's this fundamental belief in Satan that you must gain your strength and your power by consuming others. And it typically takes on the form of a very intense ritual, which makes people that have no fucking paradigm of their own existence feel special. The second that someone has never dealt with who they are as a person, they've got no communication with self, the id, then someone else who's done something that's traditional, it clicks with you better because it is the organization of your identity that you're not able to create for yourself, either through sheer laziness or lack of knowledge of how to do it, right? So people get into the Catholic Church especially. You're talking about an institution that has existed for at least 1,500 years. You go in, you ask them how to do anything, they've got 100 ways to do it that have been going for 1,000 years plus. So it feels good. Masons, same exact thing. Gangs, same exact thing. Kid's dad splits, kid's getting roughed up at school. He gets inside the gang, they beat the shit out of him on the first day, and then he survives. He realizes you can get your ass kicked and survive. And then they start loading him up, making him pound the weights, making him fire a gun, making him carry a gun, make him stop, make him say things like he doesn't give a shit about life. Well, all these groups have something similar with different tenses, right? You used to have your Elks Club, where you would do your business deals with your buddies. Then it was, the Mason Lodge, right? And the Masons go way the fuck back. So you walk inside their place, and they're like, we've been around for 6,000 years. Not by this exact name, but by this this deed, this group. We're the architects of reality. The Masons believe that they are the first architects of reality. They were the ones literally, quite literally, the Masons give themselves the credit for the pyramids, for any type of architecture where you stack blocks and build something, whether it be in a pyramid shape or a wall shape. They claim that that's their ilk. And quite technically, there are people who are engineers. I'm an engineer, right? I'm an architect and an engineer. I design massive things to be simplified and creatable, right? And that's why I'm special, right? Special. Well, the other one is that they learned out how to build water wells. And that might sound stupid, but a water well was the epicenter of every single community in the world until we had running water. The Romans came in with aqueducts to beef it up for a little while, but even the aqueducts were localized into the region of Rome until, several thousand years later, where it's like, okay, now we've got running water. The United States of America didn't have clean water as a majority of the cultivated regions until 1943. That's why there was so much sickness at the beginning of the 19th century, or the 20th century, I should say. One day I'll get that all right. That's how vaccinations got into the lexicon of the mind, because between 1943, 19001943, they had a virus called polio spread all over the place, right? Among other things. They believe you need to take power from other people to augment yourself beyond the norm. They believe in torturing a person and getting them in the state of fear, that very unique state of fear. Most of us don't walk around in fear constantly, right? You die, you get cancer, your heart would stop, your brain would overload. We all don't walk around in fear. So to them, fear is a coveted gold. It's a commodity of the emotional spectrum of mankind. And they know that when you're in the state of fear, the chemicals in your body, especially adrenaline, start to fill up your blood supply, right? And some crazy bastard somewhere in some cannibalistic war killed his enemy in fear and drank his blood, probably just to show off in front of his buddies, because, there's usually water somewhere. And he got high as a fucking kite. He consumed the other guy's endorphins, adrenaline, everything. And thus began this ritual. They do it to animals. The artist known as Prince, in his Black album, mentions squirrel blood. He talks all about it, What does he say? Is if you drink it real fast, the aftertaste just lasts and lasts. I think he says if you drink enough, you'll want to fuck, Crazy. He went somewhere and saw something that made him put that lyric in a song. Now, we know that Prince was revered by some of the elite of the world, and he spent a lot of time in France. He met a lot of people, and then he became extremely religious after all this, right? So before we get into the processing children into these sacrifices thing, which I'm sure you can add two and two all together already, and I think that a lot of you have already heard this stuff, but if this is the first time you've seen a deep thought, I know it's hard to listen to. And I'm very, very sorry that the world has been allowed to deteriorate to this level. Only us can fix this, right? How's that for English? Only we can do it, right? And how do you fix it? Well, we're going to get into that before it's over, but it all relates back to making it stick out like a sore thumb. To make sure that secret shit doesn't happen somewhere in the world. We don't need to survey everybody, but we need to connect dots together. If there's any disappearances in your area, you need to search for your local Satanic church online. You need to figure out how close they are, right? But people do hurt their relatives and stuff. I'm not saying everybody gets hurt out there, but when you have mysterious disappearances constantly, kids that disappear and never get found, I hope you're not one of the people that have experienced that hearing my voice saying this stuff now. Now, secret societies. I could look up online before I make the show and get a bunch of names of these different societies and say them all on the show. But it's really not important. You can do that if you think you have a problem in your local area. Now, the way that it's always romanticized, at least today, is that you have groups like Masons, and we had a fan that's a Mason. He's invited Kyle and I through the messaging system on Facebook to join. He said, you really love it. We're just good guys, and I know they've got all this mysticism around us, but we're really good guys, and you should just join. You dig it. Now, before I woke up, and I learned that my grandfather was a Mason, and again, he ran a dry cleaners. No kids disappeared in my hometown, I thought about checking it out. I was like, well, this is kind of cool, because my mind dug on the idea of tradition. Think how far back their rituals go. Wouldn't it be cool just to learn their rituals, And I know people that are Masons, not big, powerful people at all, just standard Joe, ex-military guy, plumber, those kind of guys I've met, and I've had brief conversations with them. I've probably only had, to be honest with you, 2 conversations with a true Mason member since 2005, since I've awakened, right? And before that, never had a conversation with anybody. One point, I actually contacted the I think it's Topeka, Kansas, which is the Mason headquarters of the state of Kansas, just to ask if, my grandfather, what was he? What did he do? Where was his rank? What was his degree ranking? And they told me I could spend $15 to find it out, and I just let it drop It's not that I don't have interest to find out where he was. I mean, I'd shit my pants if he came back 33. I can almost assure you no one in my little towns like mine get to 10, if there's degrees below 33, right? Again, I have no idea how they do what they do. I've only known the rumors that over 30, you start supposedly getting more knowledge revealed to you and you get pulled into deeper and deeper stuff. It seems a little far-fetched to me that someone is good at the bottom of the pyramid, goes all the way to the top, and suddenly they want to, engage in sacrifices. I think you're either brought in at that level or you're not ever going to be at that level, right? And then they love this whole thing of giving away 33-degree anointments to say that famous people are at the 33-degree level. So you're going to have famous people, who are 33-degree Masons who've never walked into the lodge, or maybe they walked in one day and it was like, oh, by the way, while you're here, here's your 33-degree pin. And they're like, oh, well, thank you. And then that group publishes the name of that person as being a 33-degree Mason, where they don't engage in any of the rituals. They have no knowledge of what's happening, right? Walt Disney was rumored as being a 33-degree Mason. There's Club 33 above the lagoon that was the Blue Lagoon restaurant or whatever it is, right? The Blue Bayou, restaurant in Adventureland, or the New Orleans area, right? And again, you have financiers who are financing Disneyland. And the cover story was it was 33 banks that actually financed Disneyland. That's why he created Club 33. 4 primary banks did Disneyland. And a couple stragglers that came on at the last second to help with some, bridge funding. But for the most part, it's way below 30, right? But someone also dragged, and I forgot the name of the group, but someone dragged Walt into a group, and it's in his biography. Not the one he wrote, obviously, because he died before he thought he should write one, but the one that's actually certified by Disney, which is actually an incredible read. But then when he was a kid, he got pulled into a little group. It was like Masons for little kids. And so that's the one he actually went to meetings as a kid, and it was just, teaching you how to be kind of a grown-up sort of thing. Again, it's in the middle of Missouri in probably 14 to 1920, somewhere in there, right? Then you have secret societies that aren't really a society all year round, but they come together and they do something bad once a year. And I think that because they've been exposed, they've calmed down quite a bit. But there's something that we've barely talked about on the show, which is the Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is a area out in the woods of Northern California. And it was formed in the 1800s by some artists who, by looking at their photographs, we can assume that they were a contingency of homosexuals in the Bay Area that were ostracized. And so they had little parties out in the woods. But at some point, their loathing of society, because they were obviously made fun of, because men were men back in those days, and if you walked around Nancy boy, you were in serious fucking trouble, right? During the 49ers rush whole thing, right? But they ended up becoming fairly synonymous with things that churches of Satan do. But I've never heard the Church of Satan and the Bohemian Grove being attached together. They worship the owl. And I forgot that it all has names. And then when Alex Jones snuck in and filmed them and took photographs, you have Ku Klux Klan outfits. Some are red, some are white, some are yellow or something. And they're burning the effigy of Care. And that might not make any sense to you hearing that, so here's what they do. Today, which they have it once a year, and usually it's politicians that go, and there's tons of photographs of our politicians there, right? In the 50s, you have Ronald Reagan there, Richard Nixon there. Richard Nixon, who said on tape, it was the something to the effect it was the gayest goddamn thing he'd ever seen in his life, and he didn't like going. But it was such a status symbol to go there that it was a big deal. They claim they hatched the atom bomb there through meetings, and the hydrogen bomb later on. And there's photographs on the wall where they just claim everything, right? It's pretty fucking easy just to say if the guy who invented it came to our party one time, then at this party we did that thing, right? But Care is what they call a child at the very beginning of the ceremony. And what it is it's a bunch of woods with a river that goes through it. like a really slow river, not like in Mississippi, but almost like just like a body of water, essentially like a moat. And then across the moat is this giant tree with a fabricated owl made of fiberglass today. I don't know what it was made of in the past, but then this ritual of all these guys dressed up in weird clothing are standing around it. And somebody downriver puts this wooden, it's really, today it looks ridiculous, but it looks like a boy. It's just wood kind of pieced together, and it's designed to burn. And they push it down the river, and at a certain cue point, when it becomes visually, it comes within sight of everybody, they set it on fire. It's got something on it that makes it burn. It lights up, and everyone screams, and they play it on the PA system, this what sounds like a young man screaming, like he's literally being set on fire. So they play that recording. Everybody screams and yells. The Bush family's been there forever. And that symbolizes the beginning of the ritual. So on the first day, that's what they do. And like I said, it's called care. It symbolizes your care. Every moral you've ever fucking developed over your lifetime is supposed to be burned up in that effigy. And then you can do anything that you want while you're there. Now, I've never heard of anybody killing anybody or sacrificing anybody in the modern age, right? But here's the thing. What if they did in the past? And what if, because it's so mainstream now for people can go. It's only a boy event. I think recently they allowed women to serve, but forever it was only a boy event. And as I've heard it described a couple times by people who've been there, a half to 2/3 run off and do homosexual stuff in the woods, and they just have sex. It's where they have this desire, but they keep it pinned up, maybe, and they go to these events and they sleep with each other. And I don't give a shit if guys fuck each other. I just don't care, right? And then the other remaining part go off and just have meetings and drink and get drunk and do whatever. But they haven't had any women there for 100.5 years, so that, you couldn't have a heterosexual relationship or interaction there. Again, I don't know if that's changed. So there's that. And then there's royalty. Royalty seems to have a consistent problem with children disappearing and ending up dead, or people saying that they've done rituals with children. Now, some of the people have infiltrated. I'm going to get into NAMBLA, too, because they're not exactly Satanistic worshipers, but they might as well work for the guy and get a fucking paycheck. Probably one of the most stunning things that's occurred in the last 10 years is the King and Queen of Norway. They have a giant estate, castle, In the back of their estate, 7 to 12, they couldn't quite figure out the remaining count, I'm sure it's more towards 12, of children's fresh bones were dug up in the backyard of their estate. Someone was doing some moving and building a fence and repairing, and someone happened to bury kids right at the edge of the property. And they were dug up, hit the news over there. King and Queen of Norway. They're still in the seat today, 2015. It's the same motherfuckers who are sitting there today acting as monarchs in Norway. Well, then it got wiped off the press. Alex Jones, I think, covered it pretty heavily when it first came out. I think that's where I got the story. But I remember linking to the article away from his website and reading it, and my fucking jaw was on the ground, right? Later that year, I believe, King and Queen of Norway are appearing at some public event, and there's a whole line of people, lining the streets just like they do when the Queen drives by. But they're outside their car or whatever at the end of this road. And here comes this little tiny car, hauling ass, driving straight at him, trying to kill him. And somehow, I don't know how, but he started hitting people because I guess it was dense and spread out down by the King and Queen, right? He ends up not getting to them, not hurting them at all. And as they're pulling him out of the car, he's screaming at the top of his lungs in the native tongue, "Help me kill them. They're killing our children." Somebody finally had the balls to fucking put his money where his mouth is and try to fucking knock him out. They've never answered for this crime. They've never been investigated because it's probably fucking illegal. Monarchs, before they gave up faux control to the people, made sure that the legislation said, you can never accuse us of anything. We can never go to jail. Your fucking court systems, which are actually our court systems, cannot have us on the witness stand. We can never be a defendant. The king and queen of England is the same exact way, and I'm sure Spain's the exact same way. I don't even know how many monarchs actually exist in Europe anymore. Norway, Spain, and England are the one that come up in the news constantly, and they're always attached to nasty shit. Spain, mainly financial stuff. I've never heard Spain being attached to kids. Let's take Britain. The nastiest thing that the Queen of England's been involved with, and you can just doubt this shit all you want and just look it up. There's documentaries on this stuff with interviews and stuff from the people involved with this. But there was an adoption agency. I thought I read it as it was in Canada. And the queen and king came over to visit this place in Canada, and they adopted some children. Mail order pedophilia. Mail order child sacrifice, right? I don't want to get the numbers wrong, so I'm going to steer away from some of the numbers. But they got a lot of kids, and they took them back with them. And it was under the pretense that the resources of the king and queen of Windsor were going to give the resources to these kids. They're going to get superior educations, incredible opportunities in life, and they're going to turn into people, right? It's like every fucking kid that went with them won the lottery as far as you and I are concerned, right? Nobody knows where any of these kids are today. And the people that the kids that were with them at this adoption agency that didn't get picked, and you imagine that fucking day, that would suck, right? Your parent has abandoned you, and now the queen comes and there's something fucking wrong with you. But now I think they think they're lucky stars. Everybody who didn't get picked had an angel watching over them, if there are any, right? But they have tried to find their friends. They know what they look like. They have photographs with them. They know how old they are. And they can't find any of them. And if this was a big publicity stunt or some, hey, look how great the king and queen of England is, wouldn't they parade them around the press at least a little bit and say, look at this little disciple of ours turned in to be the prime minister of fucking Zimbabwe or something, right? Something would happen with these kids to show off their success. And I'm waiting for them to cover the story again and bring out some random people and say, I was one of the kids. And we'll just see if the kids over in Canada, the original kids, can identify this kid and put him in photographs, right? But based on a lot of other rumors about what the royal family of England does, including, at least half a dozen interviews I've seen where people said, I was at a party, it turned into a ritual, it turned into a sacrifice, and children were murdered in front of my very eyes. And their blood was extracted inside these fucking goblets and passed around. And once you drink from it, you're stuck. You're fucked. Once you drink from that, what the hell are you going to do? You're going to hopefully barf your fucking guts out and say a prayer to your fucking creator because you crossed a fucking massive line. But if you turn these people in, I guess you could get some atonement for what's going on because the kid was going to get killed anyway, right? So we think these kids were taken and sacrificed. Part of the promise of drinking the blood of a child, it goes, one, you get all the endorphins of the child that was murdered, and all of their excitement goes into your blood because you're not afraid. You're excited because you're a perverted fuck. You're going to get off on it, right? Like Prince said with the squirrel blood, right? But the other side of it is that you get youth. You're eating essentially some sort of, I don't know how it works, whether it's just some sort of derivative of a stem cell theory, but you get youth. Your body gets repaired. Your chromosome end caps don't deteriorate as bad. I'm not sure how it works, but they promise extended life through health. And look at these people. They live to be 100 easily, right? Fucking royal family does not die early. They all make it to 100, and then it's sort of like poof, The human body simply can't renew beyond that point, or maybe they go to fucking Trillionaire Island. Who knows, right? But let's look at the elite in general. And elite's kind of a thing we try to avoid calling them, actually, but it's hard not to say it every once in a while. The ruling class, the bankers of the world. They are absolutely rich beyond your fucking wildest dreams, and yet they still tax the living shit out of us, and they still ruin our lives constantly. And they seem to be utterly obsessed with all the above. Control as given to them by money. They get us to kill people on their behalf, right? and they take over countries, and they just fuck up the whole planet constantly. Like I said in the previous episodes, I said if there is a Satan, he's completely in charge of this fucking planet. And so you look at these churches that are maybe the really nice churches with really powerful people, and they're going to walk in that fucking room and look at their congregation, and they'll say, look, we run the fucking planet. And they do. They fucking run this planet. There isn't a single goddamn politician that isn't corrupt or full of shit. You know, you gotta be delusionally full of shit and doing negative things, or you just know what the fuck you're doing. They run the planet, people, because no one will look at them straight in the eye, right? No one can look at what they do. You know, I guarantee you this video will have the fastest drop-off of the analytics down below of people that can't hear it. It's like we're okay just playing the odds with these assholes. Second your kid disappears, and if you've ever heard this information, it'll suddenly make a whole lot more sense and mean something to you about looking the other way. It just ensures their success, and they're expanding their forces. They're expanding everything. Mandatory vaccinations is their fucking idea. Shitty health insurance is their idea, right? War in the Middle East is their idea. Enslaving races around the world to make shitty products to fucking repress us socially, both as being the consumer and the people that have to make it, never make any money or get ahead and die in fucking factories during their coffee break or jumping off the fucking building to commit suicide. That's all driven by them. They are utter and pure chaos. It's every reason why this show exists. To fucking stop it. To heighten awareness and get people to talk about it, right? So royalty is super duper protected in England. But then there's death of children. And then there's just straight up pedophilia. Adults having sex with children. Children. Not young teenagers. Children. These kids die because once they've committed the crime, they know there's no way to cover it up. The kid's going to grow up and live and tell on them, right? And oddly enough, hundreds have been molested by acting politicians and royalty in England. The whole thing's been exposed. And David Cameron, their prime minister over there, has a dossier with all the names of everyone who's been accused. They know they're fucking guilty. Some of them are dead. Some are still alive. And so they have literally at the government level in England, they have arranged to have the pedophiles and the Satanistic circle of motherfuckers lead the investigation into this stuff to make sure nothing ever pops out. Just like the 9/11 Commission here in America, which was designed to never answer any questions, to basically have sort of a club med of bringing people in, talking to them, and eating brunch together. Never getting to the bottom of anything. Destroying the Constitution of the United States. And every single thing that would make us strong and capable of fighting back is being demonized, right? The male character, the alpha male character that's willing to just instantaneously fucking watch what they do and get pissed off and try to change it. They're trying to shut that whole fucking psyche down. Fluoridating our fucking brains, GMOing our fucking genes so we don't procreate, sending most of the super aggro males off to war because they can easily lure them in to war. Reducing education so bad that when they come out of high school, they have no options in life but a GI Bill if they're lucky. And the GI Bill doesn't pay for shit anymore in America, at least. I have no idea what other countries do with their soldiers. They have protected themselves by utter design. Everyone's too docile, too weak in the mind, weak in the soul to be able to stand up against these people. And that's one reason why I love our fans. You know, to have one of our listeners say, dude, are you doing like Masonic hand gestures in your deep thoughts? And I don't know where this, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing that's setting that off. But I like the accusation on one level because it's like, I want someone, one, I don't like anyone to like us simply because I don't want any fanboys, not fucking one, right? I want people that are willing to split the atom, argue with us, call us names if that's what they're feeling at the time. Because if they do, I know that they're passionate about something, you know? And that means in their world, they're at least trying to do good, regardless if they're able to pull it off or not. They're living for the right reasons. And that's why I think our fans are some of the best on the planet, you know. You know, this isn't a personality game between Kyle and myself, you know. We will say our names on the normal talk show, but in the deep thoughts, it's about you and me and the rest of the planet trying to figure this thing out and get over this, right? So pedophilia in America is obviously rampant. The number one organization in the world that's known for pedophilia is the Catholic Church. There's no other single organization on planet Earth that has the actual documentation about their workers molesting children more than the Catholic Church, and yet everyone looks the other way, right? How the fuck does this place still exist? And how the fuck does their lead guy come out and say, New World Order, you know, abortions are now cool and fucking climate change is real and you all need to fucking pay taxes, right? How does that guy get any fucking respect in this world when he's at the tip of the spear of the organization that has destroyed children's lives more than they've made lives better? And, you know, if that's just overlooking the first 1,000 years of their existence with all the fucking crusades, where they aimlessly and ridiculously murdered Christians, not knowing, you know, thinking in their brain because someone said those are a bunch of Muslims or Jews. They went in and killed the first fucking battle of the Crusades was a Christian village, and they murdered everybody and found out later that they were Christian. Brilliant, right? I don't know how to push this into people's brains so that we can discuss it. Let's say that everyone watching right now has heard this before, that you guys have 10,000 more details than me, and I'm going to go back into some subjects in a second here. But let's just say, you know, we sat down at a conference table and we said, look, we're going to stay here for 4 days, a week, a month, whatever it fucking takes until we distill down a way of saying what these people do in a way that people who are horrified by the first word in the sentence can hear it and not look off in some other direction or exit the room. You know, there's a beautiful turning point in the TV series True Detective where it's Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson who are cousins in real life. And I actually link back to the Kennedy assassination, to her mutual uncle. But there's a point where Woody Harrelson's character doesn't want to have anything to do with Matthew McConaughey's character, and he's like, just leave me alone. And he's like, no, you got to see this, you got to see this. And he brings him to this location and shows him a bunch of stuff. He's still not convinced. He's still not convinced to participate, or the links thereof. And Matthew puts a tape in a VHS player and shows him a child sacrifice. And we don't see it, thank God. We see just a snippet of the beginning. But then Woody Harrelson's character sees the whole thing, and he's a cop who's been at the depths of his, you know, sort of the Bayou murders. He's seen this murder at the beginning of the series, which is horrific, and he is just fucking destroyed. And they show it to one other guy later on, and he just screams at the top of his lungs because he's forced at gunpoint to watch it because he helped enable these assholes. On one level, I'm thinking, Jesus, what a horrific thing was brilliantly put in this script. On the other side, it's like, these things have happened. These things have been recorded. These things are horrific. There's definitely crime scenes that have been picked up by cops over the years and then pushed down, right? But there's photographic proof that they do what they do. Photographic proof. And I can't shake the idea that if the world could see it one time and be horrified by it, and have one guy go down or one girl go down as a result of doing this, then the world's going to look at the world a little bit different. And secret societies are going to be fucking pulled apart by their seams, right? No more secret anything, right? Kennedy warned us of secret societies. Eisenhower warned us of secret societies. Millions of people have done it over the years. Gandhi's got quotes about it. The best philosophers, politicians before corruption entered the world have said you cannot allow secret societies to exist. You can't. Because the second they can hide it is the second that they can do bad things. And they do. Partly because they're bored. Partly because they're socially fucked in the head. You know, I wanted to give you my experience with the whole Satan thing and how it came into my life just real quick. First time I ever, besides maybe seeing, I can't remember when I saw Exorcist. I saw Exorcist as a really young man. I don't remember which one came first, but I remember very vividly at the age of 9 when I got my world encyclopedias, right? The internet and a book. I was just thumbing around, just picking out books, thumbing around. That's how I learned a bunch of the stuff I've known. But one of them was, I remember going through the S book, because S is a cool letter, right? And I just going through the S book, and I saw a pentagram. And I thought, ooh, that's cool. It's a star in a circle. Just was a design in my head, it just looked neat. And then I start going through Satan worshiping in this fucking World Encyclopedia. It'd be circa 1979. And it didn't say anything about child sacrifices or anything. But it just talked about a church of people that worship Satan. And I read it, and that was it. Didn't draw fucking pentagrams after that. Just went in one ear, went out the other. But I remember the experience vividly, because it was one of the first few days I had these books, right? And I worshiped these damn things like fat kid loves cake, right? And I didn't hear anything of it until high school. And one of our buddies in high school got to a point where he had an identity crisis. He was probably about 16 years old, somewhere in there. He's a sweet guy today. I think he might be a pathological liar, but he's a sweet human being. But he had something where he got into Satan worshiping, and he would say that everything bad that happened at school was his doing, right? And kids would tease the shit out of him, and he was a fairly big guy. It wasn't like people were going to pick on him like he's a nerd or something. He's a good-looking guy. He's capable. He played sports and all this other stuff, but he just got to a point where he lived out in the country, and I think he had a problem getting the kind of girls that he wanted, and I think he had a relationship go south as well just before all this took place. But he would go out to this farm that his family owned, and for those of you who don't remember, there's things called silos that hold grain once a year until they sell it all or use it all. And this thing was empty. It's off season. And he would dig a pentagram, I guess. I've never seen this, but he dug a pentagram in the bottom and poured gasoline in all the crevices, of this pentagram, and then he'd sit in the middle and light it on fire, and he brought a bunch of guys out to do it over and over again, and finally everyone got fucking spooked because they realized he was taking the shit seriously, right? I always wonder, what would he think if good old Beelzebub showed up in the middle of one of his rituals, right? But what happened was he did this for, I think, about 6 months or so. And I remember having him in an algebra 2 class, and he was sitting off to my left, and it was a mixed grade class. So even though I was I think maybe it was a junior in high school, he was like 10th and 11th in the same class. But he was one of the 10th graders, who's this big wrestler, wasn't afraid of him at all. Turned around and said, "Oh, so you got the powers of Satan in you." Yeah, and he was always acting really weird in this time frame. Very short period of his life, but it was fucking intense, right? And so the dude goes, "Hey, why don't you stop the second hand on the clock if you got all this power? Somebody got hurt in wrestling that he didn't have a good relationship with, and he said it was his fault, his doings." And so everyone was like, "Yeah, okay, dude." But he was brilliant about how he covered his ass, because obviously nothing changed, right? But he said he would. He goes, I will. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll do it in this few minutes here. And so whole class ends, right? And this dude turns around and goes, "Hey, dude, I didn't see it stop." And he goes, "I did, but you weren't looking." I thought that was fucking awesome. It was clever to cover up a weird thing. But then he got born again, right? He went back. He either got back with his old girlfriend, which is I think what happened, and she said, you got to knock this shit off. My parents can't fucking have a son-in-laws of worshiping the devil. And so he got saved, and man, he was going to church all the time, and he got his life back on track, right? So then a few years go by, and I moved to California, and I'm talking to one of my buddies, and he had this book that was called Satan is Alive and Well on Planet Earth. And I went and got a copy of this about 5 years ago, or I found my copy or something like that. And it's really funny, it's basically calling out, and it's got some points to it. I'm just going to finish the story because it's got an interesting little kicker to it. But one of the things that they did, and he's 24, I think I'm like 18, 19 years old. But one of the things in the book was they brought up this starch. If you live in America, you can just go look at this at Target or your local grocery store or whatever. And it's called Faultless Starch. And I guess the name is, you can't blame this fucking starch because it's so goddamn good. But the name is kind of fucking weird, right? Faultless. Strange, right? At first I thought it was maybe a family surname or something weird. No. But on the front of the can is a red upside down pentagram star with an F in the middle. All right, it's kind of weird. We're in America. 5-point stars are turned up. 1 star point at the top, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the side, right? This thing is inverted. A little strange. Maybe the artist just wanted to express himself, right? Well, the book goes off and says, for as long as the story of Faustus has been written, Faustus is the traditional character that made a deal with the devil. You know, you'll hear the deal with the devil all the time in Twilight Zones and movies where it never works out, right? You get all the prize right away. You'll say, I want to be a rock star, and boom, you become a rock star. But then you only get to play for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then you fucking eat it hard, and you're in some fucking torturous realm on Earth. You want to die, and he kills you and takes your soul. That's sort of the Faustus story arc, right? They said Faustus faultless. It's very similar. But the star upside down with an F in it has been the modern interpretation of Faustus symbolism in this Church of Satan. And so, being the kind of guy that I am, I went and looked it up. I had some of this starch at home. That was the fucking weird thing. And so I'm looking at this can. I'm like, holy shit. And there was an address on the bottom of the can. So I wrote these guys a letter. And I said, what's up with this whole upside down star thing? We're in America. Why is it upside down? Yada, yada. And this book said this and this and this. Could you just at least explain it to me? I wasn't calling them assholes or anything like that. I was very cordial. And in my house, I've got the reply letter. I should have dug this shit out before now, but it would take me forever. But one of the head dudes was nice enough to write me a letter back. And it was as if he had to explain this quite a bit, right? But here's the kicker. The kicker was that I read this letter, and he said, we are in the process of flipping the star back up, but we're an international company, so there's a copyright issue that's got to be filed in every single country worldwide. And it was a good answer. And it did flip back up. It flipped right side up, which is cool. I mean, enough people must have written in to fucking make them spend a shit ton of money to flip a star, right? It's weird. But then, at the back of the letter, he had Xeroxed a photograph of the Medal of Honor in America. It's a motherfucking upside-down pentagram. Star upside, 5-pointed star upside down. And isn't it fascinating? It hit me like a ton of bricks back then, but I was totally confused. I was like, well, why is that? Why is it the biggest honor of being a soldier in the military is some devil exclusively owned symbol of the devil, right? I don't know of any Church of Christ or any type of Church of Goodness that has a fucking 5-point star upside down. I just don't, because it's the goat head, right? It's the chin, the ears, and the horns, right? God damn, that symbol's, fuck, it's so old. Good luck finding the origin of where it first showed up in society. It's that fucking old, right? Okay. Then you learn what war is all about and who it benefits, right? Order out of chaos, right? We create the chaos, and then we create the order. So you scare the sheep, and you scare them right into the fucking trap of suppression. That's what David Icke calls problem, reaction, solution. It's perfect. And so it made sense to me later on that maybe, just maybe, it's their church, their thought process being manifested right up until it's a piece of gold that you wouldn't throw away. If you got a Medal of Honor, it's probably because you actually did something fairly noble, right? Saved a bunch of guys' lives, usually is how it works, right? Or you gave your life up for some amazing thing that turned the war for the better for whomever's giving you the medal, right? So then there's this group called NAMBLA. And it's like a man-boy love association. And this is where I've seen videos of an FBI agent that was told to infiltrate this joint and figure out what the fuck it was all about. Now, before I say anything, I need you to know that President Obama of America came out publicly and named the founder of NAMBLA as one of his biggest mentors as a kid. Now, the cover story about NAMBLA is that it's a bunch of old men trying to help a bunch of disadvantaged children, disadvantaged boys, right? The true story is this fucking cover organization for pedophilia. How do we know that? Well, this guy videotaped it. If you need to see it, look up NAMBLA. I think it's just NAMBLA. I think it's Boy Love Association. It's some type of man-boy love association. National man-boy love association. It's fucking horrific. Just right in your face, right? But he goes into this organization. He's expecting a bunch of fundraising and event planning to help kids. And there was none of that. The video that he shows on YouTube which hopefully you can still find, is a bunch of old men with these little boys in their laps. And he said that he said what he wasn't able to catch on video was that when he would walk around the group, one, the videos never reveal any of their chartered cause, right? You never see this stuff that they're supposed to be doing. They just sit around with these kids and reminisce, right? And there's no guidance. There's no like, okay, Bobby, drugs and pussy. None of that, right? But they asked him, where's his boy? And they asked him what he's done with the boy. And they asked him, how many he's done and a bunch of other pedophilia shit in this organization. And it was fucking mortifying to this guy, right? And I think what's really interesting, and this is a trend in the world right now, these agents that go deep, deep, deep into this stuff, they flip out. They're just like Woody Harrelson's fictional character in True Detective. They fucking flip out. They just can't. They've never quite taken it the full extent. I can't say I have either, but I've probably taken a lot further in my own mind. But it starts becoming so horrific, the thoughts, that you kind of just stop. You go, look, I don't need any more than this to be that. People debate how many people were killed in the Holocaust. Well, I don't need 6.2 for it to be a Holocaust, right? It is a Holocaust. A bunch of fucking people were killed, and that's horrible. A bunch of kids are getting fucked with, and that's horrible. One kid getting screwed with is by an organization that's made to do it and hide within some pretense of another charter. That's all you need. You don't need two. Anybody joins that fucking organization and stays in it and hears this kind of talk and chatter, unless they're investigating to expose, they're aiding and abetting after the fact, right? Maybe even before the fact, right? So President Obama, and this is the way the story goes 100 times over, some of the kids get Stockholm Syndrome massively, and they end up looking up to their captor. And part of this is, I'm going to cover Stockholm Syndrome. I almost did a whole episode on Stockholm Syndrome, but I just don't think I can fit it into a whole hour beating up one concept, right? But if you haven't heard of it, or you have heard of it, let's review. Someone gets captured by someone and held. And you hear this all the time when these kids are released, or these kids, the little girl that just escaped from her captor a few years ago, and the guy, she's a little white girl, and she ran up to a black man and was saying, help me, help me, help me. And when they interviewed that black guy, he said, I knew when a little white girl ran up to me, a black man, and asked me for help, he goes, I knew something was fucked, because it was in the South-ish. And he said, that doesn't happen. He goes, something was bad. And they went up and found 2 other adult women that had been held by this guy who eventually blew his brains out, right? But Stockholm Syndrome is sort of what Tony Robbins teaches you, which again has been linked to the CIA, teaching him, which is that the brain can't sit in a negative loop. It just can't. It won't do it. And so you're in a horrible situation, and it's sort of that old catchphrase, and, I understand it, honestly, I do, where you say you have to make the best out of a bad situation. If you're trapped and you got nowhere to go, you're going to have to find a way to live in that moment until you can escape. And you should never get so comfortable you cease to try to escape. This little girl, took the little girl to fucking pull it off. I think that's the best thing. The adults couldn't figure it out, and the little girl got her ass out of there. Maybe it's because she was small. Hell, I don't know. But then you have sociopathic children. Kids that are ostracized. Kids where their parents didn't hang around. Obama's dad's the most fucking elusive guy on goddamn planet Earth, right? So he needed a father figure. Wanted a father figure more than ever. Bill Clinton's the same exact way. And so these old men come around and say, I will love you. I really will love you. But I'm going to do things to you that shouldn't happen. But maybe in his brain, Obama took the old man's touchy-feely love and turned it into a symbol of love in his mind. And fuck if I know if the guy didn't love the kid. I don't know, right? So Obama supposedly got his father figure, his love of a larger man, right, in his life, the Mother Goose effect, right, from this head of NAMBLA. Guy's dead now. But it all relates back to Satanism. Because Satanism existed before all those organizations I just mentioned existed. Except maybe the Masons. I don't know. I'm sure someone worshipped darkness before the Masons, but it's not documented, so it's hard to say. But it probably took them a long time to finesse their power structure to the point where they own the whole planet. But we're centuries inside the envelope of their control. You know, I would say in the last 100 years, right? We just passed the 100th anniversary of the 16th Amendment in America, which is where America's money got fucked up. Officially and forever until it's repealed, until the nation wakes up against it, right? But since then, when they control the money, just like the Rothschilds said, I don't give a shit who you vote for as long as I control the money, because then I control who you vote for. And he was right. We call it lobbyists today, but we don't connect the fucking dots, nor do we give a shit, right? But we need to. So, you know, Satanism is in Hollywood. Satanism is in music. And Hollywood, by that I'm saying television and film. Now, it's not every single show or every episode that something's dropped. As far as I know, there's still good stuff out there that's just leaking out through good people. But where the viewership explodes, so do the agendas in those viewerships, right? Any show that you know has been on for 10 years, somehow they've pushed stuff in there, for sure. They just demoralizing you. Again, it's the devil. The old adage of the devil just whispering in your ear, right? It's not the big decisions that you make. It's the little compromises you make in your moral fiber that eventually gets you transitioned to a bad way of thinking. And we're all guilty of it. Christ, we're not perfect beings, right? But we have to start caring. We have to start, you know, getting with the program. And I think, for me, I think one of the dualities of being secular, of sort of looking at religion as an objective story that's told to help us behave. And I've said this a couple times on the show. You guys have heard this before, but I'll repeat it right here and right now, which is common sense is not taught anywhere that I can put my finger on besides church, religion. In America, it's Christianity. You know, I don't think Jesus really existed, but you know what? I think that what he talked about in terms of behaving in this world and treating the other people good, and even the 10 Commandments, quite frankly, are not so bad, right? I think those things, the 10 Commandments plus the red writing in the New Testament of the Christian Bible, you know, you can see it's not spread around a lot nowadays. And so common sense about how to fucking behave in society is not there anymore, right? And anybody who has common sense, I'm going to ask you, try to find the source of your common sense without at least a relative that went to church that taught you that common sense. Even if the relative above you said, screw churches, that's all fake, they're assholes. Okay, well, they still got the knowledge from the church, and then they decided to hate the church. Because the kids that are raised completely outside of it, even though they're good kids, there's a lot of good kids that didn't get raised in churches. I didn't get raised beyond 8 years old in a church. But I know that I was surrounded by grandparents that went to church and aunts and uncles that went to church, and they made me behave. And so even though I don't think my kid's ever gone to church in her life without, you know, looking over her shoulder to see who's looking at her, right? But she got raised by me, and I have that. But is she ever going to be able to raise her kid in that? I don't know. So right now, it's weird. Whether or not you believe in Christianity or Satan really being a real, living, breathing creature, there's two things we have to come to grips with. And one is that people worship Satan, and those people go snatch people and kill them. They do. There's not going to be a church of Satan that doesn't have an agenda to do that. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to push in on whatever the fuck day they do their thing and go to the basement and find a sacrifice halfway in session. They're not stupid. In fact, they're quite brilliant about how they do it. Imagine trying to go down to the city and get a zone for building a fucking church of Satan. That'd probably be a tough permit to get, right? I suspect the city officials that are signing the documentation are the first congregation members, right? But then the other side, so we have this thing that really exists, this negative force that's hurting everybody. And then what's your recourse? To rise up as a secular nation and say, no, you can't do that. You guys are way too linked to negative shit. Well, how do you organize yourself? What do you call yourself if you're going to organize against the Church of Satan? What do you call yourself? You're going to be a church of some sort, church of the secular minds against Satan, whatever it is you call yourself, you're going to have to organize against them. Or you just join a church and you bring it up to your elders and you say, look, this just can't exist in our backyard. Freedom of religion is one thing, but when your religion is hurting other people, when your doctrine is to break the law at the maximum extent of the human psyche, which is hurting children and killing people, that can't exist in our world. Some stuff to think about. You know, one of the things I say on the show all the time is that, you know, the people that don't want to believe anything that you say, especially if you're a conspiracy person and you're like, hey, we didn't go to the moon, da-da-da, but I'm going to do a moon mission episode here next. It's because that nobody wants to wake up and have to do anything different with their life the next day. And I feel their pain, man. Trust me. You got to make a fucking decision. I got friends of mine that say, don't worry about anything that you can't change. And it's this defeatist take on life, right? This nihilistic, defeatist thing, as if you can't actually do something to change things. I think you can. And I think the only way to do it is through education. And that's what Deep Thoughts is all about. It's to kind of, again, it's not you buying everything that I'm selling, right? Which is my concepts and my impressions. If nothing else, what I'm trying to do is rile up your bee's nest, right? And I think one of the most horrific things about this episode, if you get to the end and you're like, this guy's full of shit, if you dare go research what I've told you and try to look for both sides of the fence, right? You'll be horrified. You'll be horrified within minutes. If you do a decent search on YouTube, decent search on Google, you'll be utterly horrified. And look for the agents that have infiltrated these organizations. That's probably one of the best things you can search on, because then you'll start seeing the physical evidence of what these people are talking about. You'll see the pain in their souls. And what I was going to say was these agents become religious after they get corrupted by this stuff, because they realize it's one of the only organizations that's formally prepared to go after these guys. But just like True Detective brought out, some of these guys at the top run the religious organizations, right? Most of us look at evangelists talking about God and giving up your money for a prayer. They don't believe in God at all. They couldn't possibly believe in God, let alone Jesus, right? So an evangelist on TV with a Crew Grand ring and a fucking $10 million home is as Satanistic as you could possibly craft a human being, besides maybe doing the rituals themselves. They're doing rituals on your mind, you know, stealing your money, making you believe in God, right, through this apparatus of exploding you. Bizarre. We're all in some form of Stockholm Syndrome, probably. So to settle the beef, I don't know enough hand signs to be doing them. I'm rubbing my chin right here because my hair, you know, tickles my chin every once in a while. So maybe that's one. This is a big one I do. Whatever holding a cigar is, that's probably one right there, right? But at the same time, I wanted to say, just as kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, let's say that these guys make a bunch of handshakes, right? A bunch of weird signs and stuff, right? We can't let them usurp reality. You know, it's like political correctness coming back the other way. If they co-opt peace and make it a Satanistic thing, I can't fucking do this anymore because some asshole says it's the horns of the fucking devil. Fuck off, right? I'll live my fucking life the way I want to live it. Intent is sin. Anything else is bullshit, right? If I mean to hurt you, if I mean to fuck you up, then I'm an asshole and I deserve to be taken out. But if anything, these shows are probably the most pure testament of my personality to say, look, I'm trying to pick you up off the ground and push you up further than you've ever been pushed. I want to wake up your visual cortex to all this bullshit that's going on. I want you out of the fucking matrix and in reality. Reality is already fucked enough. We got to work together to make this thing sing again, you know? So anyway, I love skepticism. I love the pressure. I love someone picking apart everything that we do to keep us heightened to, you know, maybe how we're offending each other somehow, you know. My language probably doesn't help. Anyway, if you haven't been, go to mkultraradio.com. We had a question about how to download these through MP3s. That's the place to go, is on the website. Most MP3 players that aren't iTunes will let you grab the actual MP3 to yourself, and I think iTunes does too, but the shitty thing about iTunes is that they only grab a few of the episodes. Like, they only grab like 9 episodes, and then they flush the rest. Well, we've got about 150 now, so what are you going to do with the rest of the content? If you get a decent third-party MP3 player, You can get all the MP3s and go back as far as you want. Our website, I believe, has download buttons on them as well. So if you want any of the MP3s and you can't find them, just message us through Facebook and we'll get them to you. We don't like the surveillance properties of Facebook, trust me, but it is, why not use their system and their money against them? I'm using YouTube. It's a government organization. Why not? It's free so far. So anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. I'm sure this will create tons of debate. There's a bunch of documentaries on YouTube about this, and YouTube will let you post them down below. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you haven't liked, and post your stuff down below, especially documentaries that really accent what I'm saying. I'll try to throw a few in the comments after I publish this one. But I know that you guys are major experts. You have stories that are way more intense. There's only so much time I can talk before everyone starts dialing out. But again, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Learn the rules that rule you. Put the mind back in mind control. Over now.